Hey, we meet again. Still German POWs in America. Today isn't about battles or speeches. It's about a Colorado dawn at minus 27 degrees Celsius, when one simple move made a woman think her life was about to get worse. Up high, mornings don't arrive gently. They show up like a door opening to a freezer that never closes. The sky is still dark blue, not quite daylight, and the camp sits there, quiet, squared-off shapes of barracks and fences, half buried in frost. Every breath looks like smoke, but it isn't dramatic. It's just proof that lungs are working. The air has that dry sting that hits the back of the throat and stays there. Metal feels like it wants to steal skin. Wool goes stiff at the edges. Even sound changes. Boots don't thud. They crackle on frozen ground like stepping on thin glass. The prisoners are already outside. They stand in formation because that's what you do, not because it's noble. Because the rule is simple. You stand where you're told, when you're told, and you don't make yourself noticeable. In this kind of cold, standing still becomes its own problem. Walking would warm them. Running would heat them faster. But they aren't allowed either. So they do the worst option. They wait. From a distance, the line looks controlled. Up close, it looks like small battles. A man shifting weight from heel to toe to keep feeling in his feet. Another tucking his chin into a collar until his jaw aches. Someone trying not to cough because coughing draws attention, and attention is never free. The women in the line hold their posture the same way, shoulders tight, arms close to the ribs, fingers hidden. Nobody wants to be the one who looks weak. She's in the middle third of the formation, close enough to be seen, far enough to think she can blend in. She keeps her eyes forward. Her face is flat. Not because she feels nothing, but because she's learned that expressions turn into stories other people tell about you. Her scarf is pulled up high. Her breath comes out in short bursts, and she tells herself to stay still. Still means safe. Still means invisible. Still means nothing happens to you. That's what her brain says. Her body doesn't fully agree. It starts small. A delay between what she hears and what she does. A half-second pause that she tries to hide. The cold makes everything slower, so she tells herself it's normal. She blinks, and the world feels a little too bright for dawn. Her hands are numb enough that she can't tell if her fingers are curled or straight. She focuses hard on the boots in front of her, on the backs of coats, on the rhythm of roll call, anything that feels predictable. Then a guard steps along the row. He isn't theatrical about it. He isn't barking for the sake of barking. It's early, and his job is routine. Count, check, move on. In this weather, guards watch for two kinds of trouble. The kind that comes from anger, and the kind that comes from cold. The first is loud. The second is quiet. He stops near her. For a moment, nothing happens. She feels eyes shift without turning. She keeps her face forward. That's the rule. Don't volunteer yourself. The guard points. 2 fingers. Direct. No extra words at first. You, step out. The phrase lands in her stomach before it lands in her ears. Step out doesn't mean, come here for a quick question. Not in a camp. Step out means you're being singled out. Step out means you've been noticed. Step out means the line will keep standing there while you're taken somewhere else. She hesitates, just a beat too long. The guard closes the distance, grabs her at the sleeve near the elbow, and pulls her clear of the row. It's not gentle. It's not cruel. It's functional. A movement that says, now, not later. Her boots scrape. She catches herself late. The line behind her tightens like it wants to disappear into itself. She hears a low inhale from someone nearby, the sound people make when they don't want to be involved. Her head snaps toward the guard, and the words come out before she can shape them into something calm. Why are you separating me? It's the kind of question that isn't really a question. It's a protest. It's fear trying to stand tall. The guard doesn't answer right away. He just keeps her out of the formation, away from the others, where everyone can see it happening. That's the part that burns. Being taken is one thing. Being taken in front of everyone is another. And in her mind, separation only means one thing: punishment. If someone pulls you out of line in a POW camp, what's the first thing your brain assumes? At minus 27 degrees Celsius, fear writes the story first, before facts get a chance. She says it out loud. "Why are you separating me?" And the line doesn't move.
It never does. The row stays rigid, eyes forward, like everyone has agreed to pretend they didn't hear the fear in her voice. That's one of the first rules of camp life. If you look too interested in someone else's trouble, you invite your own. So the formation holds. The guards keep walking. The cold keeps pressing. And that's exactly why those 3 words, "step out," hit so hard. He watches the line the way a mechanic watches an engine, listening for the small sounds that mean something's about to fail. In cold like this, a small problem becomes a body on the ground. Roll call isn't a ceremony. It's a check, a daily habit that keeps the camp functioning. Heads counted, numbers matched, routine confirmed. On paper, it's simple. In real weather, it's work. Men and women stand still on frozen dirt while someone with a clipboard decides whether the day starts normal or starts with trouble. The guard isn't only counting faces. He's scanning for patterns. Who's missing a glove? Who's got a scarf wrapped too tight because they're trying to hide shaking teeth? Who keeps rubbing their hands against their trousers like friction can beat physics? He looks at boots because boots tell the truth. Ice on the soles, uneven weight, toes pointing inward because someone's trying to protect numb feet. He looks at hands because hands show injury, frostbite, and also defiance. And he looks at eyes because eyes are where a person slips first. To the prisoners, this is all read differently. They've learned to treat attention like a trap. In captivity, the safest day is the day no one says your name. The safest day is the day you're not the example. So they stand straight when their backs hurt. They keep their mouths shut when someone next to them coughs blood into a sleeve. They hold a neutral face even when their stomach is empty. They learn the rhythm: count, order, silence. And they learn what usually happens when that rhythm breaks. Because step out rarely means something good. Sometimes it's discipline. You were out of line, literally. You talked, you turned your head. You took a second too long to move. You swapped something you weren't supposed to swap. You mouthed off, even quietly. Or you did nothing at all, but a guard thought you did. And in this place, a guard's suspicion can become your problem. Sometimes step out means paperwork, interrogation, a report, a note in a file you'll never see. The kind of thing that follows you even if you behave afterward. And sometimes it means humiliation. The kind that doesn't leave bruises, but still sinks in. Being singled out in front of the line. Being made to stand apart. Being reminded that you're visible when you'd rather be a number. So when her sleeve gets grabbed and she's pulled clear of the row, her brain doesn't search for medical explanations. It reaches for the one it has used 100 times. Punishment. She's not dramatic about it. She tries not to be. She stands with her shoulders square, like that might stop whatever comes next. She keeps her chin up. That's pride, yes, but it's also survival. In camp logic, looking weak invites more pressure. Looking calm is the only small control she has left. And she's been trying all morning to look calm. She holds her posture the way you hold a tray you don't want to drop. Her face stays flat. Her eyes stay forward. She doesn't rub her hands. She doesn't stamp her feet. She doesn't ask for anything. She's learned that requests become debts, so she gives the guards nothing to react to. But the cold is already taking things from her anyway. It starts as a lag, not obvious enough that anyone would call it illness, just enough that she's half a beat behind the world. A guard speaks, and the words arrive, but the meaning takes longer to land. Someone shifts in the line, and she watches it happen like she's watching from a step back. She blinks more than she should. Her gaze goes soft, unfocused for a second, then snaps back as she corrects herself. She tells herself it's fine. Everyone is slow in this cold. Everyone's brain is tired. She slept in a wooden barracks with thin blankets and woke up already chilled. This is normal. But there's a difference between cold and slipping. She answers a simple instruction, look here, step there, just a fraction late. Not enough to cause trouble on an ordinary day, enough to be noticed by someone who's trained himself to spot small problems before they become emergencies. In the middle of the line, she doesn't realize her own face has changed. It's not pain, it's blankness. A kind of quiet that looks, from the outside, like compliance. That's what makes early hypothermia so treacherous. It doesn't always look like panic. It can look like a prisoner doing exactly what she's told. Standing still, staying silent, not making a fuss.
Do you know why hypothermia can look like obedience? Quiet, still, compliant? Because the first things it steals aren't big. It steals sharpness. It steals initiative. It steals the small spark that makes you correct yourself in real time. And inside a camp, where prisoners are trained to be quiet and still anyway, that slide can hide in plain sight. The guard side of the routine is not romantic. It's practical. A person can freeze in stages without announcing it. A person can keep their posture and still be in trouble. And the worst cases aren't always the loud ones. The worst cases are the ones where someone stops reacting, stops complaining, stops even looking afraid. In the line, fear keeps people alert. In the cold, alertness is what keeps people alive. So when he pulls her out, he isn't only thinking about rules, he's thinking about time. Seconds, minutes. The point where numb becomes clumsy, clumsy becomes confused, and confused becomes collapse. He's seen it before. Maybe not with her, but with someone. And she has seen the other side before too. Someone pulled out of line for the wrong reason. Someone punished to make a point. Someone handled because it was easier than explaining. That history sits behind her eyes when she asks her question. That history is why she doesn't wait politely for an answer. In her world, explanations come after consequences, not before them. Here's the blunt truth about captivity. People stop trusting good intentions. They don't have the luxury. They trust patterns. And the pattern she knows is simple. If you're separated, it's because you did something. If you didn't do something, they'll decide you did. So she tightens up. Her shoulders rise. Her jaw locks. She tries to appear steady, even as her hands don't feel like her hands anymore. She tries to stand in control, even as her thoughts start arriving with a delay. And in that delay, fear fills the gap. Let me ask you something. When you don't have information, what does your mind usually put there instead? For her, the answer is immediate, the worst. The guard starts guiding her away from the line, and the line stays where it is, frozen in place, pretending nothing is happening. To the others, it's safer not to know. To her, it feels like abandonment, like the camp itself has decided she's already gone. And the cold keeps doing what it does. It makes the world narrower. It makes the moment louder. It makes one hand on a sleeve feel like a verdict. The cold doesn't always make people shake. Sometimes it makes them disappear while standing up. That's how it starts, fear filling the gap. A hand on her sleeve, a line that refuses to look, and a cold morning that makes every small motion feel like a final decision. She's still walking, but in her head she's already at the next step. The place they take you when you've done something wrong. The place you don't come back from the same. From the outside, it looks exactly like punishment. A guard steps in, points, and removes her from the line. No explanation, no softness, just procedure. He doesn't drag her by the wrist, he doesn't shove her. He grips her at the sleeve near the elbow, firm, controlled, like he's moving a piece of equipment that has to be taken out of the way before it breaks. It's quick enough that anyone watching would assume it's discipline. Quick is what punishment looks like in a camp. Quick means the guard doesn't think you deserve time. He stops her just far enough from the formation that she's no longer part of it, Not close enough to be protected by sameness, not far enough to be private. Right in that space, where everyone can see and no one will help. "Step out," he said. 2 words. Clean, final. She heard it, but the meaning had to travel. Her body doesn't move right away. She's not refusing, she's late. A half second too late. In normal weather, it would be nothing. Here, it's enough to make her look suspicious, enough to make her feel stupid, enough to make the men in the line tighten, because hesitation is what guards punish. So she tries to correct it fast. She shifts her weight, steps out, and her boot catches on uneven, frozen dirt. For a second, her balance goes. Her knee dips. It's small, but it's visible. The kind of tiny stumble that feels like a spotlight when you're trying to be invisible. The guard's grip tightens. Not angry, just ensuring she doesn't go down. He pulls her steady as if he's done it before, and that makes her stomach drop even further. Done it before means this is routine. Routine means you're not special. Routine means the camp has a standard way to handle people like you. She tries to straighten her shoulders, tries to recover dignity like picking up something you dropped in public. She forces her chin up. She forces her face into that hard, blank mask prisoners learn. If she looks calm, maybe she stays calm. If you look steady, maybe they don't push harder. But it's already gone wrong in her mind, because she can feel the line behind her. Not the bodies, she can't feel warmth from anyone, not in this cold. She can feel their attention pulling away. The collective decision to keep their eyes forward. It isn't cruelty, it's fear management. Everyone in that formation has learned, don't get involved, don't be seen caring, don't be associated with someone being singled out. So when she turns her head, she sees exactly what she expects to see. Faces down, eyes forward. No one meeting her gaze. No one offering a look that says, it's okay. Just the line doing what the line does, surviving by pretending. And that makes the humiliation hit sharper than the cold. Being hungry is humiliating. Being captive is humiliating. But being pulled out in front of everyone, being handled like you're a problem, does something else. It strips the last layer of, I'm still myself. It turns you into a lesson. She hears her own voice before she plans it. Why are you separating me? It comes out louder than she meant. It has fear in it, yes, but also a kind of stubborn pride, as if the volume can protect her, as if speaking first will stop whatever story they're about to write on her. The guard doesn't flinch. He doesn't look guilty. He doesn't look pleased. He just looks tired and focused, like a man who has been standing in cold air since before she woke up. Keep moving, he says, low. Not a threat, not comfort. Instruction. She tries to make herself walk with control. She fails. Her steps are shorter than they should be, like she's walking on a slick floor even though the ground is hard. The feeling in her feet is unreliable. She can't tell if her boot is planted until she feels her weight shift and realizes, too late, that it wasn't. The guard guides her, still holding the sleeve. He takes her at an angle away from the formation toward the buildings. Toward warmth, she'll learn later. But right now, the direction means only one thing: away from witnesses. Her mind races, but it races badly, like a vehicle spinning in snow. It doesn't find new explanations, it loops the old ones. She tries to review what she could have done wrong. Did she speak? Did she look at someone? Did she move out of line? Did she fail to respond fast enough? Was that it? The hesitation? The stumble? The cruel part is she can't trust her own memory in that moment. The cold has made everything a little foggy, and fog is where suspicion lives. She glances back again. The line is still. It's like watching a row of statues breathe. A few shoulders are hunched, a few heads are tucked down. Nobody is watching her openly, but she can feel them watching in the way people listen without turning their heads, in the way the air feels tense even though no one is speaking. and she realizes she's about to leave their world for a few minutes. The world where you can disappear into a group. The world where, if something happens, at least someone might later say, "I saw it." Her throat tightens. "Stop," she says, and hates herself for the way it sounds. Thin, urgent, not strong. The guard doesn't stop. "I didn't do anything," she adds quickly, because that's what prisoners say when they're scared. Not because it's persuasive, because it's all they have. Now he stops. Not because she demanded it, but because he reached the spot he wanted. He turns her slightly so she's facing him, close enough that she can see frost on the seam of his cap, the red in the corners of his eyes from wind, the way his breath comes steady. He's not out of control. That fact alone makes her more afraid. Out-of-control guards are dangerous but predictable. Controlled guards can do anything without raising their voice. He points again, this time not at the line, but at her. "Look at me." Her eyes fix on him. She forces focus. The world sharpens for a second, then softens again, like a lens slipping. "What is this?" she says. She wants her voice to sound adult, not pleading. She wants it to sound like a person with rights, even though she knows exactly where she is. He doesn't answer the question the way she expects. He doesn't say, "You're in violation." He doesn't say, "You're being written up." He doesn't say, "You're coming with me for questioning." He says, "You're not okay." It's so blunt it almost doesn't register. Not okay isn't a charge. Not okay isn't a rule. Not okay sounds like something you'd say to a friend on a street corner. It doesn't belong here. But her brain rejects it. It can't afford to accept it. "I'm fine," she snaps, too fast, too sharp. She needs to be fine because fine means safe. The guard's eyes flick quick to her hands, to the way she's holding her arms close, not just for warmth, but because her fingers don't obey the way they should. Then he looks back at her face, like he's reading something she isn't aware she's showing. "Step," he says again. "Now." He resumes his grip, turns her toward the nearest building. The movement is practiced, efficient, a man doing what his job requires without making it personal. And the fact that it isn't personal, the fact that he's not angry, makes it look even more like procedure. To anyone watching from that line, it would read the same way. Someone was singled out, removed, taken away. No explanation offered to the group. No gentle words. No, "It's medical." Just separation. She swallows hard and keeps walking, because resisting in this cold, in this open space, in front of everyone, would only add another layer. Troublemaker. She can't afford that label. Not now. Not when her body already feels unreliable. Still, one last time she turns her head toward the formation, toward the only witnesses she has. No one meets her eyes. Have you ever noticed how fear turned silence into a verdict? In her head, separation only meant one thing: singled out, then punished. In her head, separation only meant one thing: singled out, then punished. So when the guard guides her toward the buildings, she braces for what comes next. She braces for the voice that turns hard, for a room with a desk and a chair and questions that are really traps, for a clipboard, a name written down, a note that follows her. She braces for the little humiliations, the weight, the silence, the feeling that someone is enjoying her fear. Instead, the first thing she notices is how fast the cold changes when you step out of the wind. A wall blocks the gusts. The air is still brutal, but less sharp. The guard angles her toward a small structure near the duty area, not the big administrative building, not anything that looks official. Just a low door, a narrow entry, a place that smells like damp wool and boots that never fully dry. The guard isn't building a case. He's reading symptoms. Slow answers, clumsy steps, a face that's too blank for this kind of cold. He gets her through the doorway with one hand still at her sleeve, the other pushing the door open. The hinges complain. The sound is loud only because everything outside was so quiet. Inside, the air is warmer by degrees, not comfort, not home, just not lethal. He pulls the door shut behind them. The click of the latch is sharp. Her chest tightens anyway. In a camp, doors closing behind you are never neutral. Doors mean separation. Doors mean being handled somewhere no one can see. She turns fast, eyes wide. He keeps his voice low, close, like he's trying not to make a show of it. You're not in trouble. She doesn't believe him. Not fully. Not yet. Because people say things like that right before they punish you. Sometimes to soften you, sometimes to confuse you, sometimes because they enjoy watching hope rise and then drop.
"What is this?" she asks again, and hears the thin edge in her own voice. She hates that edge. She wants to sound steady. She wants to sound like a person who can argue her way out of a mistake. The guard doesn't argue. That's the first clue. He doesn't lecture. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't ask what she did. He doesn't ask who she spoke to. He doesn't say, "You know what you did." He points at a chair near a small stove and says one word. "Sit." She hesitates. Sitting feels like surrender, but her knees are already weak in a way she can't explain. She lowers herself too quickly, misjudging the distance, and the chair squeaks under the sudden weight. Embarrassing. Clumsy. She grips the seat with her hands as if she might slide off. Another guard is in the room, older, heavier coat, the kind of face that looks like it's seen bad weather for decades. He looks up from a desk piled with forms and stamps and old paper. He glances at her once, then at the younger guard. Not alarmed, not curious, just acknowledging a routine problem, like she's not the story, like the cold is. "What's up?" the older one asks. The younger guard answers in the same plain tone he used outside. She's slipping. Not she's resisting, not she's a problem, not she broke a rule. Slipping. The older guard stands without hurry and crosses to a shelf where a dented kettle sits. He pours from it into a metal cup. The smell is faint, warm water, maybe something like weak coffee that has been reheated too many times. Nothing fancy, nothing kind in a sentimental way, just warm liquid, because warm liquid matters. He holds the cup out. Drink, small sips. She stares at it like it's a trick. In her head, punishments come with paperwork. Warnings come with a lecture. Drinks come with conditions. Here, there are no conditions spoken out loud, and that makes it confusing. Her hands reach, but her fingers don't close right the first time. The cup shifts. A small splash hits her knuckles. Not enough to burn, just enough to sting. And the sting is what tells her she's colder than she thought. She tries again, grips harder, and the metal feels too solid, too real. She brings it to her lips and takes a sip too large because she's suddenly thirsty, then coughs and chokes and feels her cheeks flush with shame. The older guard doesn't react, doesn't smirk, doesn't snap at her to get it together. He just says, "Slow." The younger guard pulls his glove off with his teeth, then reaches to touch her cheek with the back of his fingers. Not intimate, not disrespectful. Clinical. Checking temperature the way you check the hood of a car. He watches her eyes. "What's your name?" he asks. Her name shouldn't be hard. It's the one thing nobody can take. She opens her mouth and... nothing. Not nothing exactly. The word is there, but it doesn't come out clean. It comes out delayed, like she has to search for it through snow. She says it. Finally. Quiet. The older guard nods once, like that matters, like that's the first mark on a checklist in his head. "Where are you right now?" the younger guard asks. It's a simple question, almost stupid on the surface, but she knows it isn't. It's the kind of question used to catch confusion. She answers too fast at first, "In camp," and then stops, realizing she hasn't actually said anything. She tries again, and the name of the place doesn't come. The state feels far away in her mind, like a fact from someone else's life. The pause stretches. She feels it like a weight. The younger guard doesn't pounce on it. He just watches.
The older guard pulls a coarse blanket off a hook, army wool, scratchy, smelling like storage and smoke, and drops it onto her shoulders. Not gently, but not roughly either. Efficient. The blanket's weight is heavy enough to register through numb skin, and that sensation alone is strange. She didn't realize how far she'd gone until she feels something again. She wraps it around herself without being told. That's another tiny humiliation. Needing the thing you were pretending you didn't need. The younger guard speaks again, still low, still close, as if he's trying to keep this from turning into theater. Look at me. She looks. Her eyes try to focus and keep focus. She manages it for a few seconds. Then her gaze slips again, drifting to the stove, to the corner, to nothing. He nods as if that confirms what he already knew. No report, the older guard says, almost to himself, and then louder, no paperwork. That sentence lands oddly. Not because she trusts it, because she doesn't know what to do with it. In her head, everything in a camp is recorded. Everything is counted. You are counted. Your mistakes are counted. Your rations are counted.
Your steps are counted. But here, no report? The older guard opens a drawer, and she tenses, expecting a form to come out. A pen, a name written down. He pulls out nothing more dramatic than a rag and wipes a wet ring off the desk. Then he pushes the drawer back in. The younger guard takes his glove and puts it back on. He doesn't reach for a clipboard. He doesn't call for an officer. He doesn't summon anyone to witness the punishment. He simply keeps watching her breathing and the way she holds the cup. Outside, wind scrapes against the building like it wants in. Inside, the stove ticks softly. The room smells like wet wool, old paper, and the faint bite of fuel. It's not comfortable, but it's safe enough to buy time. She takes another sip, smaller, like she was told. And slowly, the fog in her mind shifts. Not lifted completely, just enough that she notices what isn't happening. No questions about what she did, no accusation, no lecture, no threat, no next time. No man with a notebook writing down her name. She looks at the younger guard again. He's not staring at her like an enemy. He's watching her like a person whose job is to keep the camp from falling apart in the stupid ways it can fall apart. He says it plainly, as if he's saying, "Your bootlace is undone. In this cold, you can go down without knowing you're going down." Her throat tightens. Not from fear this time, but from the quiet insult of it, her body betraying her. The humiliation isn't being pulled out of line anymore. It's realizing she wasn't in control. Do you believe the first punishment of hypothermia is embarrassment? Because you can't trust your own body? That's what hits her. Not a moral lesson, not gratitude, a simple, bitter fact. She'd been so focused on looking tough that she missed the warning signs. She'd been so trained to expect cruelty that she misread help as danger. And she'd been so afraid of being singled out that she didn't see that being singled out, this time, was the only reason she was still sitting upright. The older guard gestures toward the cup. "Keep drinking, just a little." She obeys, and the obedience feels different now. It's not submission to power, it's cooperation with reality. Minutes pass, not many. The kind of minutes that matter when cold has started to steal your thinking. Her hands begin to tremble, not violently, just a fine shaking. The pain in her fingers arrives late, like a message delivered after the disaster was avoided. A sharp ache that makes her wince and then exhale, because pain means nerves are waking up. The younger guard watches that too. Then he steps closer to the door, cracks it open an inch, checks outside, and closes it again. A small, routine movement, the kind of thing a man does when he's guarding time. She realizes something so simple it almost feels stupid to say out loud. The door didn't close to trap her. It closed to keep the wind out. She sits there with the blanket on her shoulders, the metal cup warming her palms, and the world rearranges itself a little. Not into trust, not into friendship, just into a new category she didn't allow before. Sometimes, an action that looks like punishment
is just an intervention done fast. She realizes the door isn't closing to trap her. It's closing to keep her alive. She realizes the door isn't closing to trap her. It's closing to keep her alive. That thought should make her feel relief. It doesn't. Not right away. Relief is a clean emotion, and nothing about this moment feels clean. What she feels first is something uglier: embarrassment. The kind that rises hot in the face even when the rest of your body is still cold. The kind that makes you want to pull your shoulders in and shrink, even though you've been fighting all morning to look unshakable. There's no cinematic hug, no grand apology, just warmth returning in painful waves, and the shock of being wrong about what that grab meant. The warmth doesn't arrive like comfort, it arrives like consequences. At first, it's almost nothing, just the air not biting as hard. Then it's a faint burn along her fingertips, like someone has held a match near them without touching. She flexes her fingers and realizes she can't tell if they're moving until she sees them move. The nerve sensation is delayed, distorted. It makes her feel stupid, like her own hands belong to someone else. She shifts the metal cup in her grip, trying to find a stable hold. The cup slips a fraction. Her heart jumps at the tiny movement, and she tightens her grip too much, because she can't do medium right now. Not with her body, not with her pride. The cup is warm. That warmth should be reassuring. Instead, it makes her suspicious. Warmth in a camp is never free. Warmth is a ration. Warmth is something you earn, or steal, or barter for. Warmth is something you get because someone wants something from you, but nobody is asking her for anything. The older guard is back at the desk, not watching her like a prisoner, watching paperwork, stamping something. The younger guard stands near the stove, half turned toward her, half turned toward the door, like he's listening to the world outside. He looks bored in the way people look when they're doing something routine and they don't want to make a big deal out of it. He does not look like a man who just punished someone. That mismatch, what she expected and what she's seeing, is what starts to break her. Her fingers begin to shake, not because the room is cold, but because the body starts shivering when it finally senses safety. The tremor is fine at first, almost like fatigue. Then it becomes more obvious. Her shoulders twitch. Her jaw does a small, involuntary clench. It's humiliating. She's not choosing it. It's happening to her, through her. She takes another sip, small, like she was told. The warm water slides down, and her throat feels raw, as if she's been breathing knives for an hour. She can taste something faintly metallic on the rim of the cup. She wonders how many hands have held it. How many men have sat here, pulled out of a line, looking exactly like her looks now. Confused, blank, trying not to show fear. The blanket itches against her neck. She pulls it tighter anyway. The wool scratches like sandpaper, but it's heavy, and weight matters when you're trying to feel real again. Her mind keeps circling the same question, because her mind is a prisoner too. It has been trained to translate every action into a threat. It doesn't know how to interpret this moment without punishment attached. So she does what people do when their brain can't reconcile two realities. She asks, quietly, like she doesn't want to be laughed at. So, I'm not being punished? The words come out broken, not because she wants them to, because her throat is tight and her mouth is dry and her pride is fraying. The younger guard looks at her for a beat, not with sympathy, not with contempt, just with that plain, working man look. No, he says. One word, a hard stop, like closing a drawer. She waits for the but. It doesn't come. The older guard doesn't look up, doesn't comment, doesn't add a lecture. He just flips a paper and keeps doing his job, like this is the least interesting thing that has happened today. The younger guard adds a second sentence, because maybe he understands she needs something simple to hold on to. You were about to drop. That's it. That's the whole explanation. Not dramatic, not moral, just a fact. And that's what makes it hit. Not the warmth, not the blanket, not the cup. The phrase, "You were about to drop." Her mind tries to argue it at first. No, she was standing. She was fine. She wasn't one of the weak ones. She wasn't a complainer. She wasn't shaking like the others. She wasn't even asking for help. Then her body answers for him. A sharper sting shoots through her fingertips, sudden and bright. She inhales and her breath catches. Her toes begin to ache with a deep, dull pain that she can't locate precisely because she still can't feel them properly. Pain blooms in patches, here, then there, like returning blood tracing roots she forgot existed. She clenches her teeth. Her eyes water instantly, not from emotion yet, but from the sheer physical insult of it. The body waking up hurts. It's like being scolded from the inside. She tries to swallow and realizes her jaw is trembling. She looks down at her hands wrapped around the cup. They're shaking. She hates that. Shaking is visible. Shaking is a confession. The younger guard doesn't tell her to stop. He doesn't say, "Control yourself." He doesn't even look impressed that she's finally reacting. He just watches. The way you watch someone regain balance after almost falling, ready to catch but not making a performance out of it. Her eyes drift to the door again, the latch, the crack of light along the frame. Outside is still that -27 degrees Celsius morning, still the line, still the world where people pretend not to see. She thinks about how close she was to being that person who just sits down in the snow. Not because she chose to, because her brain would have stopped insisting on uprightness, because her legs would have stopped obeying, because the line would have stood there, and no one would have known whether she was stubborn or sick until she hit the ground. That thought is so plain, it's terrifying. She hadn't been fighting the guards. She'd been fighting the cold. And she'd been losing without realizing it. Her throat tightens again, but this time it isn't fear. It's the sudden collapse of a story she'd been relying on. The story where the danger always comes from people. The story where being singled out is always the start of something ugly. She looks at the cup again, the warm rim, the steam she can barely see. It feels wrong. It feels like someone slipped a piece of normal life into the camp by mistake. She whispers, almost to herself, "Why didn't you just tell them?" The younger guard shrugs, small. "They don't need a show," he says. "You needed heat." That sentence lands in her chest like a weight. Not because it's poetic, because it's practical, because it's the opposite of what she expected. In her mind, guards do things to prove they're in control. In his mind, he did it because there was a problem, and he fixed it. Like tightening a bolt before the whole engine throws a rod. She can't decide which is worse, being punished or being treated like a human body that can fail. Because punishment, at least, makes sense inside the rules of a camp. But this is the rules of nature, and nature doesn't care if you deserve it. Do you believe the first punishment of hypothermia is embarrassment, because you can't trust your own body? It isn't only that she almost collapsed, it's that she didn't recognize herself on the edge. She didn't trust her own sensations. She didn't even know what not okay looked like in her own face until someone else pointed it out. She swallows again. Her eyes sting. The tears that have been hovering at the edge of her eyes finally tip over, not in a flood, not in a dramatic sob. They simply fall, one at a time, because her body is already out of control, and her mind can't hold the line anymore. She turns her face slightly away toward the stove, as if the stove is a neutral witness. She doesn't want the guards to see her cry. She doesn't want to give them that. But crying isn't a choice right now. It's pressure releasing. Her shoulders shake once, then again. The blanket shifts. She grips the cup tighter, like holding onto something solid can keep her from coming apart completely. The older guard finally glances up, just once. He sees the tears. He doesn't react the way she expects. No comment, no joke, no soft words either. He nods toward the cup, like he's reminding her of the only thing that matters. Drink. That's it. That's the comfort, an instruction that keeps her alive. She takes another sip. The water tastes like nothing. The nothing tastes like safety. The younger guard steps away a pace, giving her space. That's another quiet kindness that isn't labeled as kindness. He doesn't hover. He doesn't loom. He gives her room to regain herself. She wipes her cheek with the back of her hand, rough and quick, angry at the wetness, angry that her face betrayed her, angry that she accused him with that question, "Why are you separating me?" when he was doing the opposite of harm. She tries to speak. The words come out uneven. "I thought," she starts. The younger guard doesn't force her to finish. He doesn't need the apology. Or maybe he doesn't want it. He just says, flat and honest, "Yeah, I know what you thought." The simplicity of that breaks something in her again. Not because it's tender, because it's accurate. Because it tells her he's seen fear like hers before, and he doesn't take it personally. That's when the tears change. They stop being only embarrassment and become something else. A recognition that her world has been running on shortcuts, and one of those shortcuts almost killed her. Separated equals punished. Pulled out equals trouble. A hand on your sleeve equals force. Those rules kept her safe from humiliation. They didn't keep her safe from cold. Have you ever cried because you realized someone stopped you from making the worst mistake without asking for credit? She doesn't say thank you, not in a movie way, not in a clean, grateful way. She can't. Gratitude feels too big and too sentimental for what just happened. What she feels is smaller, sharper. She can't keep simplifying people into monsters if the same hands that could have hurt her instead did the boring work of keeping her upright. She sits there, breathing, shaking, drinking, and letting the room do what it was meant to do. By time, by warmth, by clarity. Outside, the camp keeps moving. The line is probably dismissed by now. People will go back to barracks and talk in whispers about who got pulled out and why. Some will assume she was punished. Some will assume she informed. Some will assume the worst, because that's what prisoners do when they don't know. She understands that, because she was doing the same thing an hour ago. And now she understands the colder truth. She was closer to collapse than she ever wants to admit. Not because of guards, not because of cruelty, because of silence, because of stillness, because of a body that can fail quietly. The scariest part wasn't the guard's hand. It was how close she'd been to fading out in plain sight. The scariest part wasn't the guard's hand. It was how close she'd been to fading out in plain sight. That thought stays with her as the room settles back into routine. The older guard goes back to his papers. The younger one checks the door, checks the stove, checks her face like he's watching a gauge return to normal. Nobody treats her like the main event. That, strangely, is what makes it feel real. Outside, the line is still the line. The cold is still the cold. But her brain can't use the old shortcut anymore. Separation equals punishment. They keep her inside a few more minutes, not as a favor, as a calculation. The younger guard watches her hands. The tremor fades from frantic to manageable. Her breathing evens out. The color comes back to her cheeks in patches, like a photograph developing slowly. She can answer a question without searching for it through fog. "What day is it?" he asks. She answers, faster this time. "Where are you?" "In Colorado," she says, and the words land clean. That alone feels like a victory, not over the guards, over the cold. The older guard finally looks up again, and this time there's something like an approval, but it's not warm. It's practical. "All right," he says. "You can go back out." He doesn't say, "Be careful." He doesn't say, "You're lucky." He doesn't say, "Don't do that again," because she didn't do anything wrong. He just signals the end of the intervention the way you signal the end of any small fix. The younger guard opens the door and the cold rushes in immediately, impatient and alive. It hits her face like a slap. Her eyes water on contact. The warm room disappears behind her like it was never there. And for a second, she has a flash of panic. What if it was a mistake to leave? What if she slides again out there and no one notices this time? The guard waits just long enough to watch her step.
Slow, he says. Not kindly, not harshly. The same tone you'd use telling someone to watch their footing on ice. She steps out. The first breath outside is brutal. The air feels heavy again, like it has weight. Her throat tightens. The pain in her fingers is sharper now, and her instinct is to ball her hands into fists, but she forces herself not to. She tucks them into the blanket and holds the blanket tight against her chest. The camp looks the same. The world didn't change because she almost did. The formation has broken by now, and people are moving in small groups toward the barracks, shoulders hunched, heads down, faces turned away from the wind. The routine continues. It always does. In a place like this, routine is the only thing that keeps panic from spreading. As she walks back, she feels eyes on her. Not a lot of eyes, not openly. But she feels the quiet glances, the way people check her and then look away like they didn't. Curiosity mixed with caution. In a POW camp, curiosity is dangerous because it comes with questions, and questions can get you in trouble. So people learn to wonder silently. One woman in her section looks at her blanket and then at her face, not with sympathy, with calculation, with that hard camp instinct. What happened to you, and will it happen to me? She keeps walking. She doesn't offer an explanation. Explanations don't travel cleanly in a camp. They turn into rumors by the time they reach the next bunk. She reaches her spot near the barracks. Her legs still feel uncertain, but her mind is sharper now, and that sharpness brings a new kind of discomfort. She realizes how she must have looked out there, blank, delayed, stumbling. She realizes how close she was to being the weak link in the line, the one everyone remembers for the wrong reason. Embarrassment returns, but it's quieter now. Not shame in front of the guards, shame in front of herself. Someone finally whispers, low, as she passes.
What did you do?
There it is. The default assumption, the old shortcut. Step out equals trouble. She almost answers automatically, nothing, the way she said earlier. But the word catches in her throat because now she understands that nothing is not the story. The story is her body. She keeps her voice flat, controlled. Cold, she says. Just one word. The woman frowns like that can't be it, like cold is something you endure, not something that pulls you out of line. She doesn't elaborate. She can't. If she says, they brought me inside, people will hear, they treated you. And in a camp, treatment can look like favoritism, or cooperation, or weakness. Any of those can change how people look at you. So she walks to her place and sits on the edge of her bunk. The wood is hard. The air inside the barracks is not warm, just less deadly than outside. The smell is bodies and damp clothes and old straw. Familiar misery. She unwraps the blanket slowly and realizes she doesn't want to give it back yet, even though she knows she must. The wool feels like proof that what happened was real. Proof that it wasn't a trick in her head. Her fingers throb as she flexes them. Pain pulses under the nails. She rubs her hands together and the friction helps, but it also makes her aware of how easily she could lose sensation again. How quickly a morning can turn into a medical problem without anyone noticing. That's the part she can't stop replaying. Not the grip on her sleeve, not the lines' silence, not even her own question. The idea that she could have slipped away quietly, surrounded by people, and they might have watched her go down without moving because camp life trains you to stay out of it. And then, another thought, even more unsettling. The guard saw it. Not because he cared about her as a person, because he was paying attention. Because he had a job, and he did it. Because to him, a prisoner collapsing in roll call is not justice, it's a problem. A cold weather failure, an unnecessary emergency. She hates how much that matters to her. Later, when she steps back outside for the next movement, she sees the younger guard again near the duty area. He's talking to another man, hands tucked into his coat,
posture relaxed in the way only someone with power can be relaxed. When he notices her, he doesn't nod, he doesn't smirk, he doesn't make eye contact that says, "Remember what I did?" He does nothing. And that nothing is the point. He doesn't want credit. He doesn't want her gratitude. He doesn't need a story. He handled a risk, and now he's back to the day. That small detail lands heavier than any kind of speech could, because it tells her the intervention wasn't a performance. It wasn't a special exception. It was simply what he considered normal.
Do you know what changes a person faster? Kind words or quiet actions that cost someone time. Her brain tries to go back to its old shortcuts. It wants to protect her with simple rules. Guards equal danger. Being singled out equals punishment. Help equals hidden cost. But now she has a counterexample that doesn't fit cleanly, and that's what makes it uncomfortable. It complicates the world. It forces her to think, even when thinking is tiring. So the change in her isn't dramatic. She doesn't become trusting. She doesn't become soft. She doesn't suddenly believe in American goodness like a storybook. She becomes cautious in a different way. At the next formation, she watches people's faces more carefully, not for threat, but for absence. She notices a man whose eyes look dull and far away. She notices a woman whose answers come late. She notices a prisoner standing too still, too quiet. She recognizes it now, and that recognition scares her more than the guards do, because it means the real enemy in this weather isn't always a person. It can be a body shutting down politely. Nothing about the camp got softer, but one assumption in her head quietly broke. Nothing about the camp got softer, but one assumption in her head quietly broke. And once a shortcut breaks, you start noticing how many of your days were built on shortcuts. Let's keep it practical. In lethal cold, the body creates emergencies out of ordinary routines. And in captivity, the mind creates punishments out of ordinary gestures. That morning in Colorado didn't change the fence. It didn't change the food. It didn't change the fact that she was still a prisoner, still counted like inventory, still sleeping on hard wood with a thin blanket and a head full of worries that didn't turn off. The camp stayed exactly what it was. What changed was the way one moment could be interpreted. Because if you watched it from a distance, if you were standing in that line with your hands numb and your jaw locked, you would have told the story the same way she did at first. A guard steps in, points, pulls her out. She stumbles. He grips her sleeve. He walks her away. No explanation, no gentleness, no announcement, just separation. And in a place built on control, separation looks like punishment by default. That's not paranoia. That's training. Captivity teaches you to read patterns fast because slow reading gets you hurt. It teaches you to assume the worst because the worst is safer than hope. It teaches you that being noticed is dangerous and that being singled out is rarely for your benefit. So when she asked, "Why are you separating me?" she wasn't being dramatic. She was doing exactly what a prisoner's brain is designed to do: protect itself with the fastest conclusion available. The problem is that the fastest conclusion isn't always the true one. In lethal cold, the line between fine and down is thin. Sometimes it's minutes. Sometimes it's a half step and a blank look and a delayed answer. Sometimes it's the absence of shivering, the absence of complaint, the absence of normal reaction. And the cruel part is this: the cold doesn't need a villain. It doesn't need cruelty to kill you. It only needs time and stillness. There are places where nobody hits you and you can still die. Not from violence, from routine. Standing still at roll call, waiting your turn, keeping your mouth shut, trying to look strong. That's why this story matters. And it isn't because it's sentimental. It's because it's inconvenient. It forces a correction. The guard didn't pull her out to make a point. He pulled her out to prevent a problem from becoming an emergency. He didn't give a speech. He didn't ask for gratitude. He didn't gather witnesses. He didn't even call it kindness. He treated it like work. That's the turning point a lot of people miss when they imagine POW camps.
Mercy isn't always a grand gesture. Sometimes it's a boring decision made on time. Sometimes it's someone choosing the practical option instead of the satisfying one. He could have left her in the line until she collapsed. That would have proved something, proved discipline, proved toughness, proved that prisoners suffer. It would have cost him nothing emotionally. It would have required no extra effort. It would have been the easy choice in a system that rewards indifference. Instead, he spent minutes on her. He pulled her out, got her inside, warmed her up, checked her orientation, and sent her back without paperwork. No record, no punishment, no performance. Just a person kept upright. And yes, call it what it is, American mercy in that moment was quiet. Not because Americans were saints, not because camps were gentle places, but because one man chose to do the correct thing when it would have been simpler to do nothing. Here's the reframe, plain and simple. That separation wasn't a sentence. It was a rescue, disguised as procedure. The same action can mean two completely different things depending on what problem it's solving. A hand on a sleeve can be force, or it can be a stabilizing grip before someone hits the ground. Being taken out of a line can be humiliation, or it can be triage. If you only judge by how it looks, you'll get it wrong. And she did get it wrong at first. Not because she was foolish, because her environment trained her to. Because fear is a tool prisoners use to stay sharp. Because her dignity was the last thing she could still defend. And she defended it the only way she knew, by assuming the worst and bracing for impact. But that morning forced her to update one rule in her head. Not, the guards are good. Not, the camp is humane. Not a fantasy. Just this. Sometimes the thing that looks like punishment is actually a warning sign being handled in time. Have you ever judged a moment by how it looked instead of what it was trying to solve? If you have, then you understand why this story sticks. Because the cold makes misreadings faster, and captivity makes misreadings feel safer. Some actions look wrong until you understand why they happen. In that Colorado dawn, the most dangerous thing wasn't the guard's grip. It was the quiet, obedient way her body was starting to shut down while she tried to look fine. Not every separation is a sentence. Sometimes it's the only reason you get to rejoin the line at all.